Thank you very much and good morning. I am truly pleased to be here today and to serve as co-chair with Mike Doyle from the University of Georgia. This program, in my view, is exactly the kind of conversation and information exchange that we need when we start talking about reducing sodium intake. We're really grateful to the ILSI staff for assembling a notable group of experts in the fields of food tech, microbiology, and food chemistry, and collected together, as you are here today in one forum, you really underscore the diverse and complex challenges that are going to need to be center stage as we move through the issues of food and sodium intake. But just as importantly, your presence here today highlights the need for collaboration as well as creative thinking. Our workshop focuses on the technological aspects of sodium in food, but I think it's important to remember how we got here. There are an impressive, almost overwhelming number of public health recommendations that have come from a range of organizations, all calling for lowering sodium intake. These recommendations date back to at least 1969 in the White House Conference, and they go all the way through to the 2015 advisory report for the dietary guidelines, more than 40 years. But as outlined by the IOM report that recently came out, and I understand that you have a summary of these recommendations in the meeting packet, the IOM report concluded that overall these recommendations and the activities to implement them have not met with success in the U.S. The IOM report suggests that the lack of traction comes at least in part from our failure to change the food environment. It would seem that guiding consumers to select lower sodium foods and providing niche lower sodium food products simply isn't enough to move our population in the direction that they need to go if they're going to meet the dietary guidelines. Likewise, the food industry, and this includes in my mind the restaurant industry, have pointed out that they need a level playing field, and that taking sodium out of food simply isn't a matter of just not putting it in. But in all cases, the mantra for changing our intake of sodium and for reducing sodium food sources is number one, do it gradually. Do it carefully. Do it with as much research as you can muster. Recognize what can and cannot be done, and do it by all means in collaboration. As I'm guessing many of you know, there have been recent public health efforts that likely offer some newer lessons in terms of reducing sodium. The United Kingdom's Food Standards Agency has been a pioneer in establishing a voluntary sodium reduction program and has set target levels for sodium based on food categories. At the same time, the New York City Health Department has launched the National Salt Reduction Initiative, and its most recent news is the requirement that chain restaurants in the city include a warning when a food item contains more than 2,300 milligrams of sodium. The U.S. has a rich and diverse food supply, but it is characterized by high levels of sodium, at least in terms of meeting current intakes. And of course, data show that increasingly foods we consume are formulated by entities outside the home, and in this sense, the consumer is not controlling the food environment as in the good old days of home cooking, if that was ever true. So in turn, the focus seems to be shifting to food and to restaurant industries. And the question becomes, what's involved in changing this food environment? Some of those challenges will be brought out today in our discussions. We know it is not simply a matter of taking sodium out. There are safety concerns, there are flavor concerns, there are texture concerns, and what can be done varies by the food type. So, we're going to acknowledge right now there are clearly challenges, but I'd like to sound the theme that there are also clearly opportunities for creativity and collaboration. And this workshop, it's an important workshop, is a first step towards meeting those challenges and more or less setting the stage for collaboration. I'm going to turn it over to Mike Doyle now, the co-chair, who has some comments about our challenges and opportunities. He's been doing this for a long time and has an awful lot to offer. I've known him since I was 2 or 3 years old.
All right. I guess that's why I need to retire, right, Chris? Do we have another set of slides? Okay, so I just go next. Okay, thank you. Yeah, we're not here today to talk about whether we need to reduce sodium in foods or not. The idea is we agree to that, and we do need to do what we can to reduce sodium in foods. But when you do that, there's a lot of challenges and some adverse consequences. And so, hopefully today we can come up with a constructive approach to identify how we can best go about reducing sodium in food. And what we know is that, first of all, depends on the food category. And for some foods, this is going to be a much greater challenge than others. For processed cheese, we know that sodium is can be a key component of processed cheese to control Clostridium botulinum. In certain types of fermented foods like sauerkraut and certain cheeses, we know we've used for centuries sodium to control the fermentation. It controls the stages of different microbes in the fermentation of those foods. In cereal and bakery products, we know it's important for texture and for enabling the bread to rise and be leavened, if you will, instead of unleavened. In processed meats, we know sodium also is very important from a microbiological standpoint. And when we talk about the microbiology, well, sodium is important for safety. I gave you a few examples, and we're going to drill down later in the afternoon as to more specifics. Stability and shelf life. We know we have problems with a variety of spoilage organisms, and by increasing the salt concentration, we control that. And as I mentioned, fermentation is another issue. Functionality, sodium helps control the stickiness of dough, so it contributes to the meltability, shredding, and stretching of cheeses. And then there's texture. Sodium enables bread to rise and cheese to stick together, and it helps retain moisture in processed meats. It reduces what we call the purge that develops. Food waste is another issue. You know, if we're not controlling spoilage, then food spoils more quickly and ultimately leads to waste. And I see our USDA is targeting this topic and wants to reduce waste by 50% in the near future. Then taste. Wow, that's a challenge, and we're going to hear about that today as well, as to hopefully how we can come up with better substitutes, or maybe they're already out there now. But if you've ever tasted potassium chloride instead of sodium chloride, at least for me, I get a real bitter response. And then there's appearance. Sodium can also affect the color of foods. And then finally, cost. Frankly, sodium chloride is a pretty cheap preservative compared to many of the other preservatives that are there. And so there's a lot of factors that go into play here. And the challenge is incredibly great, and I'm sure there's not going to be a simple fix. It's a complex problem, and we're going to probably have to address various food types individually.